everybody. Welcome back to Season 3 of the Body Wisdom Podcast with Dr. Michele. I'm your host, Dr. Michele, and as you know, this season we're talking about healthy habits. We will be answering some of the most common questions asked, such as how do I build a new habit? Which habits are essential to get healthy again? What can I do to lose weight? How can I look and feel younger again? How can I start exercising again if I haven't done it in years? And more. I also will have some coaching patients and clients live on air, and I'll be conducting some interviews with other health and wellness experts. Of course, I'm always open to new topic ideas, so if there's a topic you would like me to address, or if there is a question you would like answered, please reach out and email me directly. Today, we're talking about why taking care of your 5 senses is vital to feeling young. In Ayurveda, it's believed that there are 3 causes of disease: making poor choices, using your senses improperly, and living out of rhythm. This week's habit, caring for your 5 senses, deals with the second one. When you're not taking care of your senses, it's called Azatman Driyartha Samyoga, or using senses poorly. When we make unwise choices, we confuse our senses. Asmaya means inappropriate. Indriya means sense organs, and Artha means the objects of the senses. Samyoga means to combine or to link. It's a mouthful that packs a punch. I know. So let's unpack it, starting with inappropriate. You and I both know what taking... Sorry, that's my dog. You and I both know what taking an appropriate or inappropriate action feels like. If you're attentive to your body, you know when music is too aggressive, food is too processed, or your eye is too tired to read the screen. Disregard your senses and you create disease in your body, your mind, your relationships, and or in your spiritual life. That is Azatman Driyartha Samyoga in a nutshell. Our senses interacting inappropriately with specific things. Respect the wisdom and sensitivity of your senses. But which specific things are appropriate to interact with? Our senses are delicate instruments able to discriminate between that which brings long-lasting balance and that which is damaging. Pay very close attention to what you taste, see, hear, feel, and smell. Notice what delights and nurtures your senses. Tune into your senses to learn. Your senses will tell you when they've had enough. Your job is to pay attention and respond appropriately. If you continually make smart choices that respect the wisdom of your senses, you won't have a problem with the second cause of disease. When you make inappropriate choices, you confuse or damage your senses. Confusion blocks the flow of consciousness. Damage destroys consciousness. Making decisions from an unconscious place will destroy you over time. We need to understand why sense organ care is such an important habit. Your senses are how you perceive the world. We all know that taste, sight, smell, touch, and sound is how we take in the world around us. We know this, but on some level we forget that these are instruments and that these instruments are extremely sensitive. And that sensitivity is how we learn what we want to connect with, what we want to merge ourselves with, our consciousness with, and yet we disregard our senses. We are often too tired, but we are still reading or watching something on TV. Our tongue may taste food and say, oh, this doesn't taste good, but we swallow it anyway. Or we have a coating on our tongue so we can't taste food very accurately. Sometimes we listen to music, but it's not really resonating with us, but we don't turn it off. Or sometimes the news is on in the background, but we leave it on in the background even though it's driving us nuts. Or we don't update our relationship agreements and deal with our relationship issues, even though they're making noise in our presence. These are some of the things that we have to deal with and pay more attention to on the yogic path or on the body wisdom path. We are preventing disease in the Ayurvedic manner. We are attuning to learn from our experiences, which relates to the number 1 cause of disease, prana parada, which is making negligent choices or making poor choices or not learning from your experiences. So if you're tired and you go to bed too late and then you do it again tomorrow, that is prana parada. The idea is that we are offending ourselves. We are hurting ourselves. We are trespassing against ourselves. We are not correcting behavior today based on what we learned yesterday. The second cause, excuse me, the second cause of disease is disrespecting our senses or not keeping our senses really clear, super sharp, and learning from our senses as we get older. And the third cause of disease is living out of rhythm with the cosmic clock, living out of rhythm with the seasons and the times of life. We have talked about this a lot with some of the other habits we've discussed on this podcast. Back to working with the senses. We know that the senses are super subtle instruments. If we pay attention to the senses, we will naturally be attuned to the life that we really want to live by knowing what we want to take in through our eyes, through what we touch, through what we hear, through what we taste, and through what we smell. And we start to live more and more through our senses. We wake up in a little bit to our more mammalian animal self. How do we do this? How do we attune our senses and up-level our self-care as we age? Each sense organ corresponds to one of the 5 elements. The tongue is water, the ears are ether, the eyes are fire, the skin is air, and the smell is earth. If your tongue is dry, you can't taste. If you put your hands over your ears and take out that space element, you can't hear. If you're in the dark with no fiery light of the sun, you cannot see. The sense of smell is your oldest sense, and it's the most primitive sense, so it has the most memory. We can recognize smells from our earliest memories. So try to think back on one of your earliest memories. Does it involve a sense of smell? A group of my friends and I were just talking about this last night when we had a little Zoom girls' night in where we were from all across the country. We were on a Zoom call and video, and we were talking about our earliest memory. And one of my earliest memories is when I was 3 and we were going fishing. My sister was 1 and she fell and she busted her lip open. And I just remember, being a little bit traumatized by that because I had never seen, at least I don't remember seeing an injury like that before. But I can remember fishing with my dad and my sisters and the smell of the water, and we were outside and just all the smells. So just think about that. Think about your first memory or some of your first memories, and do they involve smells? I even talk about that with my anatomy students when I'm lecturing at the college, and we learn about our senses, that our sense of smell is the most primitive. So it just happens to be the first cranial nerve. It's the first one that was there. Okay, let's start looking at the tongue. We want to scrape our tongues every morning before we drink our water. You can get a tongue scraper from a grocery store, a health store, or online from stores like banyan.com. This is where some of the tiny habits come in. You use these little practices to trigger other habits. You can habit stack your habits in the morning like this. I wake up, I go to the bathroom, I brush my teeth, I scrape my tongue, and then I drink my water. Why do we need to scrape our tongue? Scraping our tongue enables us to take stock of our health, remove bacteria from our mouth, prevent bad breath, prevent oral decay, detox our mouth, stimulate digestion and elimination, crave healthy foods, and taste more accurately. The tongue itself is a map of the organ system of the body. The heart, the lungs, the liver, the spleen, the kidneys, the stomach, the intestines, and the pancreas are all laid out on a tongue map. There are nadis, or energetic pathways, that connect the tongue to the corresponding organs. As you scrape, you stimulate the pathway. So on the other end of the nadi, it gets the action of scraping, which is stimulating. So we scrape our tongue, and as we scrape our tongue, we're taking stock of our health. What do we want to see? What are we looking for exactly? Are there different patterns and patches on your tongue? If there's a big patch on your tongue, look at a tongue map to see where that corresponds on your tongue. If there's a big patch of yellow over the intestines, then you know that you have ama in your GI tract. If you're aware of that and you scrape it off, that will provide the function of stimulating digestion and elimination. We also want to look at the sides that correspond to the kidneys that are stressed out. It may mean you have some adrenal fatigue going on if you're relying too much on caffeine or sugar or stimulants or alcohol. It's telling you to pay attention. We can also see malabsorption going on by looking at the edges of your tongue. It will look scalloped. It's teeth marks that go along the edge. Also look for cracks on your tongue. This corresponds to a vata imbalance, especially if there are multiple cracks. Look at your stress level. Look at if you are eating meals regularly at the same times every day. Do you need more sleep? Do you need more time sitting in silence? Do you need to eat more of a vata pacifying diet or have more of a vata pacifying lifestyle? That is all about rhythm and regularity. If the tongue shakes and you can't hold it still, this means there is excess movement in the nervous system, which can become anxiety. It's also a sign of a vata imbalance. Also look at excess caffeine or too many stimulants in your diet, which can cause excess movement in your nerves. Look for too much frothiness around the front sides of your tongue. This is a sign of too much kapha in the lungs, which is mucus, heaviness, and dampness. So you may want to have a cup of ginger tea. Look at big patches on the tongue. Look to see where they correspond on the tongue map. If your tongue looks really red and dry and has cracks, there is a pitta imbalance. There's too much heat and not enough moisture, or kapha. If your tongue is really sensitive or has canker sores, this is another sign that there is a pitta imbalance. So in summary of the doshas, a kapha imbalance is more pale, coated, and watery. A vata imbalance will look more dried out, and a pitta imbalance will look more inflamed. A deep crack down the center of your tongue corresponds to your spine. The very front of your tongue is corresponding to the crown of your head, and the back of the tongue corresponds to your root. Know your tongue. Your kids should know their tongue. You want to see how much you're pulling off of your tongue in the morning when you scrape it. This is a sign of ama, or undigested food, in your GI tract. Maybe you ate too late, maybe you're in a detox phase, or maybe you overloaded your gut. These are signs that you have ama, so you'll want to drink a ginger tea and follow the other habits so that you can get back into rhythm and stop developing ama. Your tongue is responsible for absorbing and tasting all of the 6 tastes in your diet. Another practice we can do for oral care is oil pulling. You can do it any time of day when you haven't eaten for an hour, but a lot of people like to do it in the morning before breakfast. It's bizarre at first because it's a practice that most of us are not used to doing. So how do we oil pull? First of all, why are we doing this? Oil pulling can start to pull some of the ama out of the other senses. Our skin will improve on our face. It loosens up excess in our throat. It can improve our hearing. It can pull mucus out of our sinuses and into our mouth, and then you spit it out. Some people say to do it for 20 minutes, but if 20 minutes is way too long, which it would be for most people starting out, use a Kaizen approach, which means small increments, gradually increasing. So maybe you're going to start with a 2-minute practice for maybe a month, and it really only takes a few seconds to put the little scoop of oil in your mouth, and then you swirl it around your mouth for 2 minutes, and then you spit it out. Another Kaizen move you can do with oil pulling is to start with a tiny bit of oil. Oil pulling will also whiten your teeth and make them stronger and less sensitive to temperature. Your gums will also feel healthier. Just a side note, in Ayurveda, we have an oil for every orifice in the body. Most people use coconut oil for the oil pulling in their mouth. Now let's move on to the sense of smell and move on to our nostrils. So here we have two nasal care practices, nasal rinsing and nasal oiling. Nasal rinsing helps to get the excess out of your nasal cavities. Do it until mucus stops coming out. Sometimes it's superficial mucus and sometimes it's deeper. It's important for kids who are full of mucus and CAFAs who tend to be more mucousy. This works better in prevention, not if you have a sinus infection or a cold or a flu. Parents can teach their kids how to do it using a rhino horn in 5 minutes. Bring your chin toward your chest and lift your neti pot or rhino horn. Let gravity do the work. Use 2 fingers to blow the nose. Water can go into the throat when the head isn't aligned horizontally or is tilted back. So make sure you tilt your head forward, chin to shoulder, nose to crown, aligned horizontally. Lift the pot up and let gravity feed the water down. It's good to get the extra mucus out of the nasal passages for kids and CAFA adults because extra mucus trapped up there traps bacteria and viruses. But well-lubricated nasal passages are a good barrier to bacteria. It can be done every day during the winter season or for just a few days until they're feeling clear. It's also a sign that their diet should be cleaned up by first removing dairy and wheat if they're having a lot of extra mucus. A teaspoon of sea salt mixed with warm water is all you need. If the neti pot comes with its own little spoon, then use that to measure the sea salt. Kids love doing this with their rhino horn because kids love to know how their bodies work, so make it fun. Also start to connect diet with mucus. If you are a very dry vata, then this might not be the best practice for you. Nausea or nasal oiling might be better for you. So nausea is applying oil into the nostrils. You can use an eyedropper to drop a few drops of oil into the nostril. What kind of oil should be used for nausea? Use what you have, but a good oil to use is sesame oil mixed with an essential oil such as tulsi, peppermint, coriander, or eucalyptus. You can also buy a special nausea oil. That's what I have. I bought it from the California Ayurvedic College. You can buy the Sinus Lube Nausea online. Different nausea oils have different qualities. Some are better for vatas, some are better for pittas, and some are better for kaphas. The practice remains the same, to just use the lubricant in the nostrils. If we have a lot of dried mucus or crust in our nose, we just need more lubrication. We can just do a few drops in the morning or before bed every day. Also, when kids pick their nose a lot, it's because they have a lot of dried mucus up there. So if you're noticing that, this would be a good practice to start with your child. Also, if the nasal cavity is well lubricated, the nasal hairs can do their job better. However, if you do use too much nausea oil, it can come out in your mouth and you can taste the oil, so just be aware of that. If you have sinus issues, you can find an Ayurvedic practitioner to do a full nausea treatment for you, which I've had done before at the California College of Ayurveda's Ayurvedic Spa, and it's a pretty amazing experience. All right, let's get down to the benefits of nausea. They include balancing your mind and emotions, clearing your nervous system, optimizing your breathing and pranic absorption, clearing debris from your nasal passages, and strengthening your immune function. In terms of a Kaizen approach here, choose if you're going to do a nausea practice or are you going to do a neti pot, and just work that into your morning routine. If you work in a place with a lot of dust, like construction, or if you hike a lot on dusty trails, then you should do the neti pot. It will help you breathe a lot better. If you swim or surf in the ocean, then you're already getting the effect of the neti pot with the salt water. So that is part 1 of caring for your senses. And we will continue next week with part 2, where we'll be talking about things like our eyes and our vision. So stay tuned for next week, which will be part 2.